Hello, everybody. We are into the final session, and I think that it's really appropriate that our final session is titled "The Lived Experience." My name is Marion Dyer. I'm a GP working in Ireland, in Dublin, and I also work in medical education. One of my interests is about the exercise of power in medical consultations. And Vincent mentioned the power of the patient's voice. I think there's a very easy way to identify who has the power in any interaction. And for me, it's whoever is making the decisions. In many scenarios, I feel that the expertise of people who are living through a situation is ignored or not regarded with enough respect. I don't agree with Donald Trump on many things, but I don't, at one stage there was talk about we're getting too much, we're tired of listening to experts. I think our scientific knowledge and expertise, of course, is necessary, but hopefully there is now a rebalancing of respecting and including the expertise of people who are living through the situations we're trying to work with. So you've heard from most of the people who are going to take part in this conversation, but I will introduce Michael Nugent. Michael has led and worked and represented Atheist Ireland for many years. I regard him as a colleague from previous campaigns, which were also to do with autonomy. And I wonder, Michael, would you be happy to talk a little bit about your engagement with this area of assisted dying, the experience of death, and autonomy?
Sure, yeah. My late wife, Anne Holliday, and I were involved in over the decades in numerous campaigns, including campaigning against terrorism in Northern Ireland, campaigning for abortion rights in the Republic, and a lot of kind of similar secular liberal issues generally on the island. About 15 years ago, Anne was diagnosed with terminal cancer. She was given 6 months to live. And she lasted 1.5 years. And during that time, she was just inspirational in terms of the way that she dealt with the issue. You know, she didn't want to die. She wasn't afraid to die. But what she didn't want is she didn't want to have unnecessary suffering at the end. So we met up with Tom Curran, Mary Fleming's partner, and we became instant friends and went through a load of things. And to cut a long story short, Anne made preparations to be able to take her own life if she needed to at home. And one of the things that I found, particularly when I'm talking to, whether it's given evidence at the Oireachtas committee on the issue or whether it's just talking to members of the public generally, one of the things that everybody seems to think is that it's only about the act of dying. And the point that I've tried to get across in those discussions that Anne did during the time that she was alive is it's not just about the act of dying, although it obviously is about that. It's about the peace of mind that you have while you're still alive. And from the moment that Anne had made preparations to be able to take her own life, her quality of life soared for the rest of her life. And she always had a great sense of humor. We got married, by the way, after we'd been together for 25 years, but we got married after Anne got diagnosed, just to give our friends something nice to come to rather than a funeral. But she worked for the National Museum, and I remember she came back once. She said, "Okay, I've arranged, we're going to get married in Collins Barracks." And I said, "That's part of the National Museum." I said, I thought they didn't allow weddings there. And she said, "Oh, they don't, but I played the cancer card." So that was the approach that she had to things, and she really was inspirational. But I remember one thing she said that was really profound. I remember one morning, we were just, the two of us are lying in bed with our cats all over the bed, and 6 cats all over the bed, and listening to the radio, and the sun was just coming in through the crack in the curtains, and we kissed, and then Anne said, she said, you know, I'm really going to miss this. And then she realized what she said, and she said, no, I'm not, you're really going to miss this. And it really does, you know, it's just little moments like that, they really, really do capture that it's those of us that are left behind, you know, that still have to deal with the ongoing grief. But she was absolutely marvelous. And one of the things that, I'll tell you one other funny thing, because Anne did a lot of campaigning during the year and a half that she was alive. She did interviews with RTE about assisted dying. She did various other MAiD interviews, and it was like her final campaign. She was campaigning for that. And I was on record as well as saying that I would help her if it came to it, even though it was illegal. So that was on record. Everyone knew that was the case. And the night, Anne would have enjoyed this. The night after, the night before she died, her sister was over from Scotland, and so they went out for the night. And then the following day, I had to go down to Cork to share an Atheist Ireland meeting, and I kind of felt comfortable doing it because her sister was there. I wouldn't have done it otherwise. But she died that morning. Her sister came over and she died that morning. So they were trying to contact me, and they couldn't because I had my phone off because I was chairing a meeting. So a friend of ours who's a police sergeant contacted the police in Cork and said, can you go down to this hotel and tell this person that his wife has died? So they came down and they told me, and they were really nice. And I said, I've got to get back up. And they said, well, look, there's a train leaving in about 10 minutes. If we give you a lift down to the station, you know, you'll be able to get that train. So the guards brought me down to the train station. I got the train. People, meanwhile, are ringing each other up, letting, you know, the word is getting round that Anne has died. And somehow the message got mangled into, Anne has been found dead in the house, and the police have brought Michael to the station. So we got away with that. But the one thing I will say about that, the whole, Anne died naturally in the end on that morning, and it's the same with a lot of people who make preparations for assisted dying. Is a lot of people do die naturally, and it's because it's not just about the act of dying. It's about the peace of mind that you have while you're still alive, and that's the one message that I've found, you know, when talking to other politicians or just members of the public. It's the one thing that I think gets across the point in a way that a lot of people haven't thought about before. So it's something I would suggest, a point to make whenever you're advocating for the issue. So anyway, I could talk about Anne for years, but I won't. I'll leave it at that for the time being. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Kashmir, while you were talking, I was reminded of an Irish expression that people often wish for what we call a good death. And when you described your Uncle Wayne's death, it sounded to me like you as a family had succeeded, and he had succeeded in achieving that. If there was something that you could leave with people who have the power to make changes to our situation in Ireland, what message would you like to leave them with?
That is a powerful question. When I think about, and I mentioned this in my talk, but when I think about the experience I had with my uncle, it really was a gift in so many senses of the word, to be able to really embrace and cherish those last few weeks with him. Without him having set his date for MAiD, and if that MAiD wasn't an option, I really don't know what, the last couple of weeks or years of his life would have looked like. But, I think it would have been a lot more tragic. It would have been just seeing my uncle suffer and turn into someone he didn't want to be, and as he lost his autonomy. I'm not very concise usually, so I'll try to make it down to a simpler point. But yeah, I think it's one of the most special things you can embrace with your loved one, and I think, and it's a choice that everyone deserves to have. Yeah.
The words power, choice, autonomy keep coming up in this discussion. Siobhan, I'm thinking about Vicky Phelan and Vincent's artwork, and I'm remembering that Vicky challenged many institutions in Ireland, including my own profession, the medical profession. I'm wondering, in terms of your experience of Irish healthcare, where do you feel we're at around the power of the patient's voice?
Oh, loaded
please
question.
be honest.
I think we need to use our ears. We need to listen. Who is better to advocate for your patient well-being than the patient itself? Our voice needs to be listened to. You have to appreciate nobody knows our body better than we do ourselves. You're entitled to your opinions, and I'm not insulting any doctors. You've all spent years to get to your position and where you are, but it comes down to the choice, the duty of care, and for me it's the option, and I think we have so much to learn, especially from all the countries and all the opinions we hear. We all need to continue learning. Improvements are always needed. Science is improving, but there isn't going to be a cure for my disease in my lifetime. So as much as research is developing and it's improving, there's a lot of us that are not going to benefit from it. So I think we need to be heard, and they need to acknowledge and accept the choice that we want to make for our own bodies and our treatment of care. I hope that answered.
I remember, and this is a long time ago, in the very early 80s when I started in medical school, one of our teachers, and we were fortunate we had some forward-thinking teachers, but I remember very early in my undergraduate experience, this teacher said to us, "You were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason."
Yes.
I suppose my impression is that we are moving more and more towards engagement with the people that we work with. Speaking for my own profession, I personally feel that the speed at which we're journeying is way too slow. But every opportunity there is, I think, for us to be reminded that we're there to serve the person that we're with. And just to be reminded of that is valuable, Can I ask for your impression of the power of the patient voice also?
Of course, yes. Yeah, I guess just from
Thanks, Sarah.
our experience with Brendan, we just, from our family's point of view, we trusted Brendan when he said that this was what he wanted. I laughed when Vincent said it earlier, Irish aren't very good with death. Because we put our head in the sand a little bit, and we didn't, don't talk like that, Brendan, and, but he was persistent. He knew he knows his mind, and he also knew his limitations of what he was willing to withstand from this illness. And, listening to Michael's story, I feel like if he had the peace of mind that there was an option there if he needed it, that would have given him so much peace, because he was very afraid of the deterioration that was happening so quickly. And, we had a great experience with palliative care. Like, I have every respect for them. But towards the end, Brendan was getting very frustrated that he had to go to hospital appointments to be told nothing new. There was no cure for what was ailing him, you know? He was just getting worse, and his lifestyle had just deteriorated. He was a different man from the man that I like to remember, the man that I think about coming to visit in Dublin, to the person that, you know, we say goodbye to. I draw a line in the sand of where those people kind of meet, because they were so different. Like, the Marcia that we're talking about here is different to the uncle that I grew up with. So, yeah, I guess just, I wish that Brendan, that we could have had an experience like what Kashmir had with their Uncle Wayne. I wish that people would take the patients, you know, just trust what the patient is saying, because, as you said, you know best. And, you know, at the end of the day, we trusted Brendan. We believe everything that he said, and the reason we're here is because we're standing by that. We just appreciate his resolve in it.
I have to say, one of the impressions I've had over the 2 days is the generosity of everybody, and particularly the people who've come and been willing to be vulnerable, to share personal stories. And I do believe, in my experience of other campaigns, is that there is nothing as powerful as authentic, lived experience stories. It's so much more powerful than philosophical or technical discussions. So I want to thank all 4 of you for being generous and for educating medical and legal and other experts, because in many ways, as I've said, you are experts in this area. Just to respect what we've been talking about, I would like to leave the final word to the powerful patient voices. So can I ask each one of you, just very briefly, just to leave us with a final message?
Death is not the greatest loss of life. The greatest loss is what dies while we are living, like our hope, dignity, independence.
Thank you.
I think everyone's voice should be heard in this, and I only hope that us sharing our story, it lends to this cause, and I hope that other people don't suffer in the way that Brendan did.
Thank you.
I would just say this is generally, obviously, it's not going to be for everybody, unfortunately, but be optimistic. Ireland is changing. You know, we lived through a very different Ireland than the Ireland of today. People are more willing to stand up for their autonomy. The church doesn't have the control over the people that it used to have. It still has legacy control over health and education in particular, because of laws that were put in place when they did have control over the people. But we're moving on. In many ways, this issue is quite like abortion, because although everybody won't, some people will just do what they're going to do anyway, regardless of what the laws are, because one's own ethical conscience takes precedence over unjust laws. And if you have a choice between unjustly suffering or legally going along with an unjust law, most ethical people will follow their conscience.
I think I just want to add to the first comment, just that you know, there can be a loss of living, a death in life if someone, you know, has to prolong their suffering and they do not get to make that choice that would end their life. But as for what I speak to, or what I spoke to earlier, there can also be life and death. And because that's what I experienced with my Uncle Wayne, we lived so fully, so rawly, so humanly together in those last few weeks, and just being with one another. And you know, we got that because he knew that his death was coming. And as the piece that seems to be the really final word. There's so much peace that is brought to someone making that decision to finally end their life, and it made him live, you know, those last few weeks in a way that he probably wouldn't have without that. So I think, yeah, there is also life and death. That's kind of what I've learned from my experience. So
Thank you. Again, thank you all so much for being generous and for educating us. Thank you.